Have you ever wondered what exactly made the prophet Elijah such an extraordinary and impactful figure? What set him apart from so many other biblical characters, making him one of the greatest prophets of all time? What was the secret behind his unwavering faith, unquestionable courage, and the unparalleled power he demonstrated throughout his life? In the midst of a world filled with false gods, ruled by corrupt kings, and a society that had distanced itself from spiritual values, Elijah rose as a solitary voice, challenging an entire kingdom and performing miracles that still leave us impressed and intrigued to this day. This is the fascinating and powerful story of Elijah, a prophet whose life holds a secret that every believer today should deeply know. By understanding what drove Elijah, we can find answers that will enrich and transform our own spiritual journey. Now imagine the following scene. A solitary figure stands on top of Mount Carmel, facing no less than 450 prophets of Baal in a spiritual battle of epic proportions. What was at stake wasn't just a religious question. It was the very soul of the nation of Israel. In a time when people were lost and divided, worshiping false gods and drifting away from the true God, Elijah, with unshakable confidence, called down fire from heaven. And this fire descended, proving, in a spectacular way, the supremacy of the one true God. But what gave Elijah such immeasurable courage? What fueled his unwavering faith to face an army of false prophets and the corrupt structure of the kingdom alone? As we delve deeper into Elijah's story, we discover a truth that, although simple in essence, has profound transformative power. This truth is not merely an ancient tale meant to remain on the pages of the Bible. It is, in fact, a model for modern Christian life. Elijah's story is a living roadmap, a clear and practical example of how we can live a robust life of faith, even amid the adversities and challenges of our time. Are you ready to discover the secret that made Elijah one of the most powerful prophets mentioned in the Bible? This secret, when understood and applied, has the potential to revolutionize not only how you view faith, but also how you live your spirituality every day. Get ready, because we are about to embark on a journey that spans the centuries, exploring the life of a man who spoke with ravens, resurrected the dead, and even outran war chariots in a supernatural race. More importantly, we will uncover the eternal principle that fueled his extraordinary relationship with God. A principle that, surprisingly, is as relevant and powerful today as it was thousands of years ago. Are you ready to unlock the secret of Elijah and tap into the same source of power that this great prophet accessed throughout his life and ministry? Stay tuned, because what you're about to learn has the potential to completely change how you approach your faith and, most importantly, your relationship with God. This journey will be transformative. To fully understand the significance of Elijah's secret, we must go back in time and comprehend the world in which he lived. The historical and cultural context in which Elijah ministered is crucial to appreciating the magnitude of his role as a prophet. Imagine a divided nation, a confused society, and a people who had lost their spiritual way. Israel, in the 9th century BC, was plunged into a spiritual crisis of gigantic proportions. The kingdom of Israel had split in two. The northern kingdom, where Elijah ministered, was in deep spiritual decay. King Ahab, influenced by his pagan wife, Jezebel, had led the people in a dangerous direction, drifting away from the true God and encouraging the worship of Baal, a foreign deity. Worshipping Baal was not just a theological deviation. It was a symptom of a culture collapsing, both morally and spiritually. The worship of Baal was rampant, and the true God of Israel was almost forgotten. The spiritual crisis Elijah faced was so deep that Israel's very identity as God's chosen people was at risk. It was a time of spiritual darkness, not unlike the struggles we face in our modern world, where truth is often distorted and faith is either marginalized or ignored. In 1 Kings 16 verse 33, we read that Ahab, son of Omri, did more to provoke the anger of the Lord, the God of Israel, than all the kings of Israel before him. This verse captures the depth of corruption and idolatry that gripped the nation. The environment Elijah was called to prophesy and was not just challenging, it was hostile. He was, in fact, a solitary voice of truth in a sea of falsehood and idolatry. And yet he did not shrink back. Elijah was a champion of Yahweh in a land that had forgotten the true God. The parallels with the world we live in today are striking. Just as Elijah faced a culture that had turned its back on God, we too are challenged to navigate a world where truth is often relative and where faith is frequently marginalized or ridiculed. But just as Elijah had the opportunity to stand firm in his faith, even when the odds seemed overwhelmingly against him, we too can take a stand. And here is the most intriguing point. Despite the overwhelming odds against him, Elijah never backed down. He never compromised his message or conformed to the demands of the culture. Instead, he stood firm, armed with a secret that enabled him to challenge the forces of spiritual corruption and face a kingdom that had abandoned its God. This secret is what we are interested in understanding and applying to our lives today. As we begin to unravel the layers of Elijah's story, we see that the context in which he lived was not just the backdrop for his story. It was the crucible that forged his unshakable faith. The trials and challenges Elijah faced were not mere obstacles in his path. They were the proving ground that shaped his mission and made his ministry so crucial. And in many ways, we also find ourselves at a similar crossroads. Our world, like Elijah's, is in desperate need of truth, courage, and unwavering faith. And just as Elijah had a secret that empowered him to face these challenges, we too have access to that same powerful truth. As we continue to explore Elijah's story, keep this context in mind, because understanding where Elijah stood helps us comprehend how relevant and powerful his secret is for where we stand today. This historical context reveals that Elijah's power was not just a result of external circumstances, but of a deep inner conviction and an unbreakable connection with God. Now, let's focus on one of the most dramatic and impressive events in biblical history, the confrontation on Mount Carmel. This epic confrontation between Elijah and the prophets of Baal was not just a display of power. It was the culmination of a long spiritual battle, an event that definitively demonstrated the truth and power of God. Imagine the scene in your mind with all the details. The land is ravaged by a 3-year drought. The people are desperate, not knowing where to turn, divided between following the God of their ancestors or the pagan gods introduced by their rulers. Elijah, moved by divine instructions, proposes a bold public challenge for all to see between the true God, Yahweh, and Baal, the pagan god. In 1 Kings 18 verse 21, Elijah addresses the people with a cutting question. How long will you waver between two opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him. But if Baal is God, follow him. These words echo not only in the time they were spoken, but also today, challenging us to take a clear stand in our own faith and relationship with God. The terms of the challenge were simple, but loaded with symbolism and deep meaning. 2 altars, 2 sacrifices, but no fire. The God who answered with fire would be declared the true God. The 450 prophets of Baal went first. They called out to Baal from morning until noon. They shouted, danced, and even wounded themselves, but there was no answer. There wasn't even a sign of Baal's supposed power. Then it was Elijah's turn. Unlike the prophets of Baal, who resorted to elaborate rituals, Elijah, with quiet confidence, rebuilt the altar of the Lord, using 12 stones to represent the 12 tribes of Israel, restoring what had been destroyed. He then did something surprising. He ordered that the sacrifice and altar be drenched with water 3 times, making it humanly impossible for the fire to ignite naturally. Then, at the time of the evening sacrifice, Elijah approached and prayed. The simplicity of his prayer is as impressive as his unwavering faith. In 1 Kings 18 verses 36 to 37, he prays, Lord, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, let it be known today that you are God in Israel, and that I am your servant, and have done all these things at your command. Answer me, Lord, answer me, so these people will know that you, Lord, are God, and that you are turning their hearts back again. God's response was immediate and astonishing. From heaven, a powerful fire descended, consuming not only the sacrifice but also the wood, the stones, and even the water that drenched the trench around the altar. The people, in shock and reverence, fell prostrate on the ground, crying out in unison, "The Lord, He is God! The Lord, He is God!" This moment marked a decisive turning point for the nation of Israel. a moment when God's power was manifested so clearly and undeniably that even the hardest hearts could not ignore it. However, what stands out the most in this event is Elijah's quiet, unshakable confidence. He did not doubt for a moment that God would answer. This level of deep faith, combined with intimate obedience to God, reveals the true secret of Elijah, his life of fervent prayer and his total submission to the divine will. The confrontation on Mount Carmel was not just a public display of God's power. It was a revelation of the intimate and personal relationship Elijah maintained with the Creator. Unlike the prophets of Baal, who relied on desperate human efforts, Elijah simply prayed, confident that the Lord would act. The key here is not only the miraculous outcome, but also the relationship Elijah had with God. A relationship fueled by a life of constant prayer, unwavering faith, and complete obedience. This is the secret Elijah leaves us. When we align ourselves with God's will, when we fully trust in His power, and when we live a life of sincere prayer, we too can experience the supernatural in our own lives. And this secret, simple yet profound, is still available to all believers today, just as it was to Elijah. As we reflect on the life of Elijah and the secret behind his powerful faith, we are reminded that the same God who worked through him continues to work in our lives today. Elijah's secret, his intimacy with God, his fervent prayer, and his unshakable trust in divine providence, is within reach for all of us. It is not a power reserved for a select few, but an open invitation to anyone who desires to live a life of total surrender and deep connection with the Creator. By following Elijah's example, we can face the challenges of our time with courage, knowing that God is with us, ready to act in supernatural ways in our lives. Now, I ask you, which aspect of Elijah's life impacted you the most? How can you apply Elijah's secret to your own spiritual journey? Leave your comments below and share your insights.